Absolutely. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hi, Rodney.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Doing really good.
Good. I'm going to crank up my volume here a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you good.
Good. And your microphone's working well. I think, boy, I tell you, life is crazy, Rodney. Life is crazy. Life is pretty good these days. I think we're supposed to get some rain today, right? Isn't that the rule?
Maybe this afternoon or something.
Yeah. And I have to ask, I always ask because I'd like to know. Inquiring minds want to know, did you golf this weekend?
We got to play a little bit of golf. Got rained out Saturday, but got one of my good friends, his father from the country Lebanon or however you say it.
Yeah.
He's in, so we got to hang out with him and some of his family. They're going through a rough time in that part of the world, but you couldn't tell it with that guy. He is like the salt of the earth, man. He's just one of the greatest people ever. And then I'm gonna brag about our dog. My oldest son is at UT, and he come down this weekend, and he did another dog training thing with her, and they got another ribbon. So,
oh, that's good. They train dogs.
Yeah, well, for hunting dogs, they if they get so many ribbons, they become like a master champion and all this stuff. So she's got like 2 more ribbons to become, I guess, the highest she can be considered. So it's
that's very cool.
Field trials, I guess, what they call them, field things. So
no idea. That's very cool. Well, congratulations to them.
Yep.
So I think that it's going to be kind of a fun day. Got my head is spinning. I don't know how that's going to turn out. But I think we're probably going to start this way. That's right. So here we go. There we go. There we are. Rodney's.
All right. Well, I'm going to move this screen, just make sure I'm on the right screen here. Looking at a 3-month view of our rates. Okay. And if you start over here, okay, red means bad. Whenever you see it kind of going down in red, that means it's bad. And green means it's going in the direction where rates are getting better. So as you see back in February, went down. We had a nice little increase there. Just our standard roller coaster. But since end of the month, we've seen some nice increases, and hopefully that will continue. There's a lot of talk in the news about, okay, well, are we in a recession? Are we going to hit a recession? Mm-hmm. So recessions always help mortgage rates. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that if that word recession keeps getting thrown out, even though it doesn't affect you one bit, mortgage rates will probably likely to go down if we ever hit a considered recession. So,
no kidding. And
because manufacturing is getting hit pretty hard right now too. And although a lot of the country's doing well, there's a couple sectors like real estate and manufacturing, which is a huge part of the overall picture of the economy. So that's they are sluggish. So that's why they're, I think it'll definitely help our rates once it gets to a point where they start coming down and a little bit more consistent.
And whoops, didn't mean to close that, Rodney. Sorry about that, bud. And so I'm checking the rates today is at 719. That's what, sorry.
Yeah.
Told you. I told you. Yeah, 719. And we came down from close to 7.5. People were screaming 8, just a few days ago. I mean, it's a little bit uncommon for rates those are pretty wide swings. Would you agree, or am I just imagining things?
It was an extremely wide swing at the end of the year. Um, After that, from October to the end of the year, was one of the biggest swings I'd seen. But after that, it is a big swing, but not crazy. I mean, we totally see the whole. To me, the whole world was thinking we're gonna have continuous cuts by the Fed by now, at
Mm-hmm.
least one
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so. After we haven't seen the cuts, now everybody's talking about recession, and now you see it starting to affect the rates, maybe to where it might be, that kind of negative talk um, is helping our rates, right? So it's it's definitely not. They definitely think inflation's on the way back to where they want it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing the swings, with a little bit of the news. I mean, the subtleties of the Fed, just the word. I was watching
Mm-hmm.
a business station that I watch pretty frequently, and they were talking about the subtleties. He used the word, I can't remember what the word is, but they were dissecting the sentences to the word specifically and how the markets were reacting. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, but this recent new Fed people, the chairman and everybody. I mean, they openly kind of give direction on what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't been a secret like it has been years in the past. It's like, wow, I can't believe he did that. It's like
Yep.
everything's they kind of lay it out there and tiptoe around it, but tell you what they're going to do.
And I think that, and we'll lay off the Fed because I mean, all things being equal, I think they're doing a good job, but I'm like, that's way over my pay grade. But people are watching that stuff, and I think that when they give those signals, they're kind of saying, if things stay reasonably stable, this is what we're going to do. But they've always got that, if something blows up, I sure don't mean that literally, but I mean, if something changes dramatically, we might have to change the rules. And anyway, so the rates are what the rates are. Well, here's my story. You got time for a couple of stories, Rodney?
No, absolutely. I
It's
can't go
story
anywhere.
time.
I'm locked in. I'm under contract.
You are, by golly, and we got that. That's right. Um, Here's what's going on in the real world of real estate currently, because people they're thinking, here's what you'll hear: rates are too high, houses are too expensive, nobody's buying, inventory is low. I can confirm that. But people are talking about buyers not coming into the market. Let me tell you something. I've been working with some folks, several folks, but this one particular couple, we were hot after it, and we were working in the Franklin area. Now, given Franklin, Tennessee it's pretty hot. Williamson County, Tennessee is pretty hot. We're active here. There's probably places across the country that aren't so busy. We are, even in the midst of all this stuff. I'm telling this story because Rodney and I, over the past few months, have talked about rates. They may be getting high, but people are becoming normalized to the rates being a little bit higher, and not necessarily okay with it, but okay with it nonetheless. I mean, it is what it is where it is. We were looking for houses, and we've had to be a little bit cautious because we've got timelines and situations that we had to pay attention to. But for the houses that we looked at that were priced even relatively close here in Franklin, and I looked it up today, 21. We looked at 21 homes. Certainly just a few of them would fill the bill, but out of that, with the exception of a few that were just priced really incorrectly, all the rest of them were under contract in 3 or 4 days, all of them. And this is in the 7s and the 800s in Franklin. So for anybody that's thinking there's nobody buying, wrong.
Yeah, The problem is inventory, like you just said. I mean, out of all those 21, it went in 2, 3, 4 days. That's
Yeah. Yep. And even even the ones that were a little bit overpriced, there people are coming in hot. So tying that together, what I thought we'd touch on today, and Rodney's really the expert on this, and I think we probably touched on it before, but it's a subject that constantly comes up, is what are closing costs? What exactly goes into closing costs? For anybody that's bought a house, that's a question you're going to be going, well, what is that? And it's just, so we're going to kind of go through what the closing costs are. So you want to kick us off, Rodney, with some thoughts on that?
Absolutely. The first thing I'll say is, the closing costs are, keep in mind, we'll talk about a bunch of different fees or several different types of fees. But closing costs, I pretty much include every single cost that involves with a customer going to basically what it costs them to get in the house. Okay.
Yep.
A lot of people consider closing costs just what's on the left side of a good faith estimate, which ranges from origination fees all the way down to your recording fees and stuff, but do not include escrow accounts in closing costs. So for today's purposes, although it's not considered closing cost definition, I include taxes and insurance and those costs in closing costs, because when you're speaking to a buyer, they don't know the difference between a closing cost and prepaid items and those sort of things. So to leave that out to me is kind of going into a little bit of a different, you're just kind of tricking them really, because you're not letting the customer know what they really want is how much do they need to bring to closing.
That's yes.
So did you want to go through or you want me to go through the article or just jump in?
Well, I think that you've gotten this started really good. These costs, which are fees that are, it's how much you bring to the table to close the loan and get the key to your house. That's the bottom line. The median cost of a loan, it used to be, and I think it still is there a percentage that sometimes you can use as a rule of thumb for closing costs?
People's try, use like 3 to 6%. But the big thing is right now with sales price, because you may deal with somebody buying 300 and you may be dealing with somebody buying 2 million. Well, 3% on 300's not going to, but 3% on 2,060,000, you're not going to have 60,000 in closing cost. So a lot of it depends on the price. But I mean, if you're looking at a $500,000 house, you're probably looking at 10 or 12,000, depending on title costs, who pays,
Right.
and what's customary in that county.
Now, there's a group called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which I don't know how well they do their job. I don't know, but their goal is to protect all of us as consumers, and they sort of track things. And they had mentioned, they had told us about in 2022, the median cost of a loan paid by home buyers, including origination fees, appraisal, credit report, title insurance, discount, and other fees, was $6,000. That was the median, $6,000. That was a 22% increase from 2021, according to them. Now, I'm going to guess that it's probably gone up in this year as well. Would you say that's probably the case?
It's going up significantly. And one of them, they even talk about the cost of the credit reporting fees.
Yes.
This article says they've gone up anywhere from, a small percentage to 400%. And that's what we've seen. We've seen an incredible, crazy increase in some of these costs that just, that you have to pass through. If you don't pass through, you're going to, to the consumer, you're going to go broke, right? So as these fees go up, the companies are going to pass through these fees.
Yeah.
And increase the cost of basically originating a loan. So yes, and they talk about origination fees. Origination fees are basically tied to your rate. It's going to be but they go into all those other fees, and what they're talking about is really the considering them junk fees, right? The whole purpose of this article is that the government's calling them junk fees, and they're trying to help out with fees, and similar to the realtor situation, right? They're trying to make homes more affordable. So at first they attack, they jump on the realtor fees and like, okay, well, let's start making this negotiable to try to make home ownership a little bit more affordable.
Right.
Now they're talking about junk fees, but the thing about the fees are these are pass-through fees, meaning that the mortgage companies aren't getting these fees. Like when you get an appraisal, most companies charge you exactly what the appraisal cost.
Right.
Like I've never worked for a company that didn't charge exactly what the appraiser cost. So really, and then your attorney fees, your title fees, your recording fees, your escrow fees, your state and county tax stamps, and all that are going to be dependent on which title company you choose and which property you choose. So, but I guess my point is that these fees are going up kind of because costs on the planet Earth are going up. These aren't something the government can jump in and start arbitrarily thinking that they're going to start saving us money from.
And there's such and I think that we were talking about this about a month or so ago. They were talking about saving money, and what was the issue? And it was such a small amount. It was, trying to make homes more affordable by saving like $500 or something.
It was, they did some stuff with the FHA premiums.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the crazy part about it is, okay, they're attacking these things, the junk fees and closing costs and things like that. But the CFPB was created in 2006, right after the crash, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the CFPB was created, this is how we were running. A processor could do about 40 loans a month.
Wow.
At the time. And after CFPB and all the regulations that Dodd-Frank and all that came about, we went down to about 15 loans a month.
Wow. Really?
So just the regulations that they've added, doubled our support staff cost. And they're doing all this to treat all consumers are going to get a better deal, but they're really not. They've created so much. A lot of it's good. You go back and start talking about CFPB. There's, I really like a lot of stuff, but what they've done is created so much bureaucracy and so much paperwork that it doubled and tripled the amount of support staff we have to have. It makes it more expensive to do a loan. And who does that get passed on to? Consumers. So
yeah.
For them to try to pick on fees and junk fees is like trying to put air into a flat tire. It's doing nothing. Inventory is, first of all, rates is the number one thing hurting everything.
Yeah.
And if you have a 1B or a 1A, that's going to be inventory. In affordability, rates and inventory. And after that, it's but the article is, they're trying to make it, they think it's making it harder by adding realtor fees to this transaction.
Which is the punchline. We'll get to hold off on that one, but that's really what the reason I put this one first is because for people that are familiar with purchasing a home, they know that closing costs are coming and they know to sort of get ready for that. For a first-time home buyer or somebody that maybe buys a house once every 10 years and isn't, a numbers person, they're trying to piece it all together from earnest money to the inspection costs to all of it, and then you get into closing costs, then you get into, but taxes and insurance aren't exactly that, but it's,
they're going to need it. It might as well be called that. Yes.
It might as well be called how much money do I need to bring to the table, which is what you said. And we get asked that all the time. And it's tricky because you can't sort of give them an answer until, number one, you give them an address, and it's the taxes, and it starts there. But here's what the article is saying, and this is what we just have to kind of help people understand: is not everybody pays the same amount in closing costs. It really is different from person to person or situation to situation. The final bill depends on several factors, like we were talking about. Closing costs can include application fees because those vary, from place to place. And then they're talking about title. That's what it was. They were talking about eliminating title insurance. Remember that?
Potentially eliminate, yes.
Yeah. So it's like $3,000 all of a sudden the house is affordable.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and you don't know exactly, if you don't understand what title is, basically the long and short of it is, if you get title and you get an owner's policy, you're reassured to you got an insurance policy that says that you own the house free and clear. So if somebody comes back with a mechanic's lien or something else, or the person said they didn't actually have, somebody comes back and said they didn't even have permission to sell that property, you would be covered. So that's the insurance piece that you need on the title. But like I said, the governments, they've created such a crazy paperwork storm of a process that requires so much manpower and a lot of extra due diligence. These costs have doubled, and these little nicks at what they're trying to do and talking about they're not a solution.
And I'll be the first to agree that the government involvement, I don't know if that's phrased properly, but back in 2008 and up, the work that they did, Dodd-Frank and all the rest of it, the work that they did to get financing squared away and back on track was really good. But it's the overkill. Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't say it's overkill. I have an issue with CFPB, and this may not be the show. The CFPB has no oversight.
What I'm saying is that the involvement after the meltdown and how they were able to fix really qualifying buyers, I think is probably what it boils down to. Would that be fair?
I think what you're trying to say is basically the end product of a conventional Fannie Mae loan is going to be standardized in a GSE pool where they can sell it. Okay. They're not going to mix it in with any other crappy loans or whatever you want to call them, to like loans that don't have their income verified and things like that. Right. So they're all going to be a standard loan that can be sold on the secondary market.
Got it. And I mean, the work that the lenders have done to get things back on track, what I'm talking about is the lack of foreclosures, the people being able to stay in their homes, qualified buyers when I bought my house in 2005, it's, can you fog this mirror? Yes. We were able to, you're good, $500,000. I think what we're seeing, and I think we probably agree on this, you just said it, is that the government's chipping away at, we're going to call them junk fees, whatever that means to them.
Yeah.
They're talking about reducing the title insurance, which no insurance doesn't sound very smart to me, but it sounds to me like those are things that are being approached so they can say they're working on affordability,
yes,
to present the argument that we're in your corner and we're trying to, make houses more affordable by cutting the cost by $2,700, a $500,000 house.
Yeah, and for somebody that has no context of history, it may sound good, but they're the ones that's created the crazy nightmare that we're in. I wouldn't say it's a nightmare. It's just extremely cumbersome with all the paperwork and stuff you have to do now and how much it takes to do it. So that's the issue. I mean,
every year in the real estate business, every year they update the forms. They're TAR forms, Tennessee Association Realtors. But they update the forms, and we have like a page count. How many pages? Because I mean, like listing agreements used to be 5 pages. Now it's not that. it's more than that. Now these days, with appraisals and home values skipping along pretty good. Now it's slowed down a lot. But from the lender's point of view, because we used to do this back in the day, was we had the ability somehow to roll closing costs into the loan. Does that go on anymore these days?
Well, you can never roll them into the loan, but what you can do is, let's say you that whatever the price is, let's say it's 300,000, and you
Mm-hmm.
negotiate the price to 290,
Mm-hmm.
but you need 10,000 closing costs. So then you say, well, I'll pay 300,000 for your house if you pay 10,000 of closing costs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if that's that, I guess you'd consider that rolling it into the purchase price, rolling it into the loan, however you want. Rolling it into the loan is just not the correct term, because they'll allow anything but the loan to buy the house to go on a loan. But if you can move around their closing cost and down payment money, where the sellers can help with the closing cost, usually the seller can't help with down payment money. That's where you get the benefit of it, or rolling it into the price.
And the reason I ask about that is because that depends on the house appraising. I mean, that is
Correct.
part of the
Yeah.
deal. And with the way things were going this last few years, values were going up so fast, appraisers couldn't possibly keep up, because how could they? I mean, home prices were going up a lot every month. And when an
Hmm.
appraiser is doing his appraisal, he's looking back. It got to the point where anything more than 30 days was out of touch.
Yeah, and Fannie Mae become very accepting when the appraisers were using what's called time adjustments. So if you'd sold one 3 or 4 months ago, and there's a couple others that sold since then, they could do a time adjustment on the old comp and just say, well, if it sold today, it looks like it would sell for this, and give it, up the value.
Oh, really? And it's
Mhm.
time adjustments. I did not know that. And the it's something that's kind of new. Tell us about this. The appraisal waivers.
Hmm.
I want to say that it's new, but it's not. Probably, is it?
It's been around a good while, and I think it's gaining more popularity because Fannie Mae, for years, I'm talking several years, has been collecting data on every appraisal that we've done. Okay, so when I do an appraisal and I have, say, 3 comps and a subject, Fannie goes and catalogs how my appraiser ranked every one of those properties in the values.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The condition, the number of bedrooms. And so when somebody else buys a similar property in the neighborhood, they may have used the same comp I used. And so they're comparing those 2 comps. And then whenever you start getting differences, Fannie Mae will put us out a message that says, hey, this appraiser said this was in a declining neighborhood, or it was 3 bedrooms, or XXX. It said it was, they'll even say this was used as a comp in a different appraisal, but they said it had a different bedroom or whatever.
Right.
So I guess my point is that when these things are selling now, Fannie Mae has access to everything that's sold and all the updates, and they can say, right when you run it through the computer, they can look at the address and say, wow, we feel like it's there. We're going to warrant that value today because we've
What?
seen the
Huh.
comps around it, we've seen the neighborhood. And it's not going to happen out in rural areas very much, but if you're
Correct.
putting a
Yep.
decent sized down payment in an area that's had a lot of sales and a lot of comparables, it does look at your credit score. So if it's a very good profile, you can get that appraisal waiver message.
Plus, the market. I think it's fair to say that the market somewhat has stabilized. It may not be what we want, but it's. Would you say that it's stabilized pricing and all that?
Sure, I mean it's increasing. I mean, there's people are thinking it's increasing 1%, 2%, or
A
somebody
year.
might say it goes down, and that's pretty stable. I mean, it's got to do
That's what I'm saying.
something.
That
It
that
can't stay zero. So sure, I mean, if it's under 10%, I mean, it's fairly stable. But see, even under 10%, even if it's like 6%, God, you know, a $600,000 house, it's $36,000 a year. It goes up. So a lot, you know.
Yep. So here we go. This is I like being able to do this. Moving on to the next topic. Now, closing costs, it's important. Again, if you're getting ready to buy a house and you've heard closing costs and it sounds like a scary number, just talk to your lender, talk to your agent, but talk to your lender. They're the ones that actually knows the inside numbers on that.
Yeah, can I add one really good thing about that article, Andy, is that one thing they did say is if you want the best deal, to shop it, and that is true, and couldn't have been said better. If no matter what situation, no matter what you're buying, you need a couple references, and people don't have to pull your credit. Try to get them on the same day. And try to get the quotes on the same day because the rates move so much. Other than that, you can call them, give them that information, get your quotes on the same day, get 2 or 3 quotes, and you'll definitely come out with the best deal.
That's a pretty cool thing for you to say. Yeah, and you're like you said, if they pull credit within a 45-day window, it doesn't ding you at all, right?
Right, but
repeatedly.
I'm pretty private, right? So if I'm shopping and I want to call a couple different companies, you know, and I would call, if I was doing, I'd call couple local companies that have good reputations, and I'd give them my information, but they don't have to pull your credit.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, like, if somebody calls me and says, "Hey, can you just give me a rate based on a 750 score?" Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't care if their score comes in at 800, it only helps when it comes in at 700, you know, they just didn't know what their score was. So it's no big deal.
Got it.
But you can shop the same day without giving all your personal information out and get a closing cost estimate or something that's like that to compare the lender fees.
Got it. Yeah. And that's the best defense you can have is be a smart shopper, I guess is what you're saying. That's all it is. Moving into since we're talking about closing costs, that may or may not be looking at some changes coming down the road. Now, what we're going to talk about now, if you're ready for the switch, is the new practice changes that are underway. What we're talking about, it's back, the NAR settlement. What is happening in the NAR settlement? What's taking place today? The new practices changing. There, August 17th now is I'm calling it the conversion day. I don't know what else to call it. But start on that day. All the software and everybody has to be in position to have these changes. Remember, there's 2 changes coming, and the changes are you can't promote by a compensation on the MLS anymore. And you have to have a buyer representation agreement before you even take somebody out to tour homes. Those are only the 2 changes. But from that comes this.
Clarify a buyer for me. You know, clarify when you stop looking at, you know. So yeah, I like this article too because it's answering some of these questions that me and you talked about, right? That's
yes.
So yeah, if you want to jump in there, that's really good because it's exactly what we've been talking about.
Yes. So what they've done is they're clarifying the changes that are going to be made that realtors are just going to have to get used to. And you know what? There's nothing bad about it. And it's all consumer based. It's gonna help the consumer, but there are some, I'm going to call them risks, but there's some financial risks that's coming along with this because fees are negotiable. That's it. End of story. Full stop. But now everybody's asking for that negotiation more than ever, and so you'll have to just deal with the facts. I mean, I'll show you a couple of. Let me give you one example. Hang on. I didn't number these. Hang on. No, this is good. The 10 Commandments. I like that. There we go. My seller will not budge on pricing even after 100 days. Nope, that's not it. Can't find it. Silly me. Sometimes sellers are going to try to sell their house without offering a commission. That's going to happen these days. That's already happening. How do you compensate for that? If you're working with the buyer's going to have to pay the buyer agency, the buyer broker. They're going to have to do that or go on their own. That's what this creates, is that those situations. So here we go. The major terms. Okay. There's going to be, we've got we've got preliminary approval that's happened for these cases right now. And that's what's generated this August 17th change. That's going to happen. The interested party contributions seem to be up in the air a little bit. Has that been settled as far as you can tell?
I think it's, yes, as far as I am concerned, the interested party contributions have remained the same, and there's really no need to change them. And the reason there's no need to change them is because the buyer and broker commission for a real estate agent has never been considered part of the seller contributions. Like, the seller contributions are clearly defined of stuff that's going to the buyer, and it's got to meet certain requirements. So depending on down payment, you can go anywhere from 2% to 9% or 6% in closing costs, right? Help from the seller. But what they've always said in transactions that's been customary and normal, if a seller pays those fees, that is not an interested party contribution, meaning the sellers always pay the realtor transaction fees, and they can still do that outside of the interested party contributions.
Yes. Now, and Phil, relative to what we're trying to talk, and this is where, and I apologize if it seems like I'm coming off sketchy on this. The fact is, these changes are causing questions that are just hard to answer. I mean, I don't know how to answer it. And this is a really good one from Philip. Will we have to have an agreement for each property, or can we keep one open indefinitely? I think that's probably what that says. And the answer is, I don't know. That's the problem with this. The Zillow has created a document that's supposed to follow what the guidelines are currently, and I can show you this, though you're not going to be able to read. Ange, don't worry about this. It'll be small, so I'm showing you just to show you that I have it. This is a touring agreement, and what they're trying to do is find a way to, since you have to have something signed, this deal right here seems to be the first shot across the bow. Across the country, there's going to be brokers, just like I'm sure in my company, they're going to create a document of some kind that's going to help us get this touring thing put together. Because I tell you it's so confusing. And if it seems like I'm getting energized, it's because I don't know what the end game is yet. Nobody does. At least that's my feeling. I don't mean to make it sound scary, but here's what we're coming up against. Maybe I'll do it this way. I'm going to do it this way. Hang on. I know you can't see that. It's probably a little bit frustrating. But it says turning in the new requirement regarding written buyer agreements. The council reviewed the terms that would trigger the requirement for this touring agreement. And here's how it started. Working with, I'm not an air quotes guy, but I am today, working with, this language is intended to distinguish MLS participants who provide brokerage services to a buyer from those MLS participants who simply market the services or just talk to a buyer. They're saying there's a difference between me working with the client and if you just meet somebody and talk to them on the street. That's what it sounds like. But what they're getting at is, do you remember that there was a certain president who said, it depends on what the definition of is. Remember that?
I don't, but the way I took it is basically is that you're going to be fine if you're a listing agent and somebody walks in your house.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Okay,
right.
because you're already under contract for the seller, and you're good to go there. So, and otherwise, if you show somebody a property and they even said it was even virtually, like if you do a virtual tour, you're going to have a buyer's agreement signed.
That's
So,
correct.
I mean, I think that people shouldn't pussyfoot with this thing, mess around with it, or whatever you want to call it. It's here to stay. The tour agreement that lasts a day. I mean, let's get these things signed and figure out how you want to have the conversation with the customer and move on.
Yep. But if you read this one, I'm not going to go into the small print, but it says right there, buyers shall not owe or pay broker any fee for the touring services. That's a document that protects you're doing it for free. That's the guarantee on that document is nothing. You're not being charged anything.
And see, there's later in that article, they talked about, they also outline things that when it comes to charging like that, it kind of, to me, threw a wrench. It kind of, to me, was saying, don't be vague about it. Don't, you've got to have a conversation and you got to spell it out, and it can't be like basically anything the seller's willing to pay or something. They quote it like that. You can't just say whatever the seller's willing to pay me. It's got to be worked out and agreed upon, and there can be a lot of variances, but I think that what they're saying is just this is a change. Let's embrace it and move on.
Yeah. And so for a lot of people, Philip, the answer is going to be a case by case basis, or as I'm trying to think through, like all of us realtors across the country are trying to puzzle out how is it going to work from a practical standpoint. It's one thing to have new rules and guidelines, which I'm not here to judge whether they're right or fair or any of that stuff. I just got to deal with them. So in this case, it's such a good question, Philip. If I was working with a buyer and we were going to go look on a Saturday with a series of homes, we'd have to look at those properties. This is post August 17th. We'd have to look at these properties, see if they're going to fit for the buyer, meaning if the buyer isn't willing to or can't pay any of the brokerage fees for the buyer agent, then they're off the list. We're only going to look at houses where the compensation is being offered. We can sign a touring document for that day with whatever those numbers are, meaning we're going to say on there, buyer isn't willing to pay commissions, whatever. If we're going to go out and look at Sunday, we're going to look at a different set of homes. Under normal circumstances, we'll look at it the same day, but a different pricing structure is what I'm getting at, Then you could do that. Now, could you do it open-ended? I think the answer to that is you could have you could have a year, whatever the case is.
Sure.
But you'd have to know going in that the buyer is the one that's saying yes or no. Maybe this is the simple way to put it. We can look at 10 houses today and the buyer gets to choose yes or no based on the compensation model for that particular house. It's really just that simple. Maybe that's the easy way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just and that update didn't have all the things in there, but I thought it was good that it mentioned that you can't, as a realtor, you can't provide all this and what you're going to be paying other people and other brokers for other sites to tell you what the commission would be if you bought that house. Like, they're saying don't give out information to these companies that's going to pop up that just going to show you what you can make on the house, that shows the buyer's commission. So I thought that was a good thing too, is that, we've talked about, well, people are going to just come up with a new website. And I'm like, no, if they're shutting this one down, DOJ's involved, they ain't going to allow. And now they're putting it on the onus of the realtor, saying, don't give that info out to sites like that.
That's right. And we're going to talk about that in a second. This lawsuit, I don't know how this came about, but they accounted for creative people trying to do workarounds. I mean, repeatedly they're saying, don't go outside the lines, don't go outside the lines, don't do it, They also defined, I thought this was interesting, and I don't mean to make light of what the definition of is. I don't mean to make light of that, but that's what it started to look like. They defined what a home is. Now, in this particular case, they did. I think it's a government thing, not more than four homes.
Unit or whatever. Yeah.
I think that's what that is. But one of the practice, I'm going to leave this one item, and then we'll move on to the next one. One of the practice changes members are asking about most is the requirement that offers of compensation be made off the MLS. We're just talking about that. The senior counsel and director of legal affairs stressed that compensation for brokers can be negotiated in consultation with clients. What he's saying there is, if they don't offer a commission, are you willing to pay me? That's the consultation. Notably, sellers can continue to offer buyer concessions on the MLS, subject to the MLS local rules, provided that the concessions are not conditioned on the use of or payment to a buyer broker. This doesn't change. This is where it gets really foggy. He reiterated that the settlement does not change the ethical duties of realtors that realtors owe their clients, highlighting how protecting client interests and behaving with honesty remain cornerstone of realtors' code of ethics. What that means is they will be able to publish today. Will that change by 17th? I don't think so, but you never know. At a total amount of dollars that are considered a concession. But none of that can be specific to an agent. That has to be worked out behind the scenes. In other words, you buy this house, Mr. Homebuyer, and they're going to give you $7,000 in concessions for you to use however you want. Then the agreement that you have with the buyer broker agreement would kick in, and either it covers that or it doesn't.
Right.
And that's where the buyer would come up with the difference. We're going to dovetail that into what we were just talking about. For any extra, let's say it's $5,000 extra, I'm making up a number. Where's that going to go? To the closing costs. And that's, so, call it, I'm going to say, let's say it's 4%. Who knows what those numbers really are, but 4% of the closing costs plus the buyer agent, the buyer commission, buyer broker commission on top of that. That's why the closing cost rules could possibly change.
Yes. I mean, you talking about the IPCs?
Well, I'm talking about for when a buyer is buying a home and they've got closing costs that we just kind of washed through those.
Yes.
The calculations.
They've got a number, they got a concession in the MLS, a certain number, whatever that is, and it can be used for anything. It just can't be earmarked for buyer broker commission.
Correct. So let's just do a really quick example. I don't have paper or anything. $500,000 under normal. Maybe I shouldn't. I'm not going to do that. Being specific might get me in trouble. I'm just saying, if the seller concession being offered doesn't match what was agreed to in the buyer representation agreement, there's going to be a deficit that the buyer is going to have to make up in cash. And as far as I'm concerned, it may be not. Well, would it be a closing cost? I don't know. It'd be on that side of the sheet.
That's a question for us. See, it's like, all right. So if the buyer has to bring it to closing, we have to source it. Okay. So now if they have to bring additional funds to closing, we're going to have to source where that comes from or if they already have it. So it just depends. Like if that agreement is, see, I think you can have agreements outside of, I don't know, outside the HUD, outside the CD, meaning for buyer broker commissions. And that's something that we're going to have to figure out is like, could they give you a chicken? Like, could he say, I'll give you a motorcycle?
Well, that's what that term "in consideration of" means. Doesn't mean necessarily mean dollars,
So, but I don't think Fannie Mae is going to want us getting into the middle of, seeing if your chicken was healthy or if your motorcycle had gas and insurance, all that stuff. So, I think that stuff is going to be left out, and that the lenders aren't going to see it unless it's going to be coming from the seller.
But here's my point, and we'll move on to if it's okay, if I don't want to step on anything. The cost of buying a home for a home buyer, where it was kind of standardized. I don't know that it was, but it was customary. That's a fair word. I think it's fair word.
Oh, 100%.
We've had customary expenses up to this point. If somebody's trying to buy a house that they really want, they're using an agent and the seller isn't paying any commissions at all, that additional burden of paying the buyer agent is going to be now on the buyer themselves. And so the cost of the house is going to go up X number of percent or X number of dollars. Because that's what you were saying was you can do, they're talking about hourly rates, a la carte, or commissions.
I can't believe I've seen that hourly rate, but I've seen it. Yes.
Yeah. And somebody's going to do that, $150.
They're going to try all of it. But what I think is going to remain and be successful is close to the system we have now, but maybe just not as the percent being just as high. I think that the percents will come down. Like it may not be 5% to sell a home anymore. It may average out to 4.7 or something. But yeah, that's the thing about it. It's they're going to try everything, but a seller that wants to sell their house has to pay. They're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay a similar fee to what they've been paying. The system's not changing.
You're saying they're going to have to, and I'm telling you that there's going to.
They're going to have to be in the market. If they want to sell, they don't have to do anything. But if they want to sell, they're not going to be able to sit there and say, I'm going to get top dollar for my house and not pay any realtor fees.
Exactly.
Everybody's going to skip them.
And I think, and we have this, I agree with you, but I'm also enough of a cynic, is that the right word, to say that there's going to be a bunch of people, because I might have been that guy if I didn't know the industry, that would try it. Let me sell the house. I'm not paying them nothing.
Yeah, listen, they already do that. They already do that. I mean, we already have for sale by owners. And, there's times like if somebody wants to move in your neighborhood, like you've got some crazy cool neighborhood, you could probably post it. There's times they were just posting on their message board and selling their own homes. But the value of the real estate agents, they're tremendous, especially when they're not just crazy flying off the shelves, when they have to market them, when they have to get them cleaned up. It's the advice that they give and the actions that there's a lot to it. That, but
yeah.
If a seller decides, I just don't see a seller going, well, I'm just going to sell my house for overpriced and not pay anybody.
Well, the guy that's going to do that is the guy that was going to be FSBO anyway. That's going to be the FSBO.
He's going to be on his third realtor, and the third person is going to tell him the same thing the first two said, and then they're going to be like, "Well, I'm a genius because I was the only one that told him." No, the other two told him, they just didn't listen. He wanted to, and people will try that, and they can. It's America. God bless them. If they want to try and sell it, maybe they might get lucky and sell it. Yeah. I just think I've seen the other system work. Buyers want to buy, sellers want to sell. I mean, and agents put it together.
And I agree with you. I cannot believe that we've burned up that. I cannot believe the time. Jeez Louise. So I want to touch just on this is going to be, Rodney, heads up. This will be in the article I emailed you because it was the real estate news article. So I just want to touch on a couple of other things because these lawyers, I may not appreciate their skills, but they're pretty smart. And this is a few things that I wanted to cover. We've touched on it, but the MLS policy changes clarified compensation field and more. One of the biggest changes of the multiple listing is the removal of the offer of compensation. Talked about that, where agents could specify compensation available to brokers. Got that. But NAR also provided other details and made it clear the MLS should not try to circumvent the new rules among the policy updates. MLS must retain and define cooperation for MLS participation. We talked about that. Not enable, this is tickling me, not enable or support any non-MLS workaround for members or sellers to make offers of compensation to buyer agents. You know people are going to try it anyway. You know.
Yes.
I'm sorry. If they're making this much of a big deal about it, somebody's putting plans together. And it's not funny. I'm just saying that, it's kind of a human nature. You're telling me no? Is that what I hear you saying? Okay. Game on. But the next
and see, that was one of the things that I was saying. It's just like every time I hear something about this, it comes up where it seems like somebody's trying to circumvent and get the information that's used to be published. And when it's clearly that they don't want it out there, the whole thing about this is they don't want that attached to that property. So we've got to move on. The people who are like, okay, well, I'm just going to call them or I'm going to figure out a way. That's cool and all, but basically don't just give up on the split commission and realize that that any fee is going to be negotiable and it's like any other fee. It just needs to be in the transaction like it always has been.
Now I'm going to press through on this. We might run a couple of minutes long, but and this is relative to Philip's question. When is a buyer agreement needed? Here we go. NAR clarified when an agreement is necessary, when it isn't, and what it might include. One basic question: what does it mean for an agent to be working with a buyer? I was laughing about that earlier because the definition of is working with the buyer, which triggers the need for a written agreement. NAR said agents can still market their services to buyers or talk with potential home buyer on a seller's behalf. For example, answering questions at an open house without needing agreement. Oh, good. Okay, that's.
Remember, they can't mess with sellers. This whole deal is sellers are exempt from this, except that one little rule of I can't list commissions.
Yeah, but they're talking about I believe that they're talking.
If somebody walks into a listing.
That's what I'm saying. So in general, if an agent, now this I thought was funny. If an agent isn't providing a specific service and doesn't expect to be paid for the activity, a buyer agreement isn't required. It's all free. It's not specific. You want numbers? Yeah, I can't give you that. Can you do comps on this? No. I mean, would you get sued? I mean, it could do a bait, Anyway. However, services like touring a home or arranging a showing do require a written contract. We covered it, but still. But it can be short-term agreement, Philip, that does not include the payment of a fee. That's what I just showed you that Zillow had. There's going to be people signing agreements to tour homes, and when they get done, they're going to do an end run and find somebody else to work with. They're going to use
or just throw that one agreement away that was used to show the home to figure out the details, and then write a new agreement with your contract.
Maybe. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's.
I mean, I get. Yeah, it's just a huge change for you guys, for realtors to.
Yeah. Final thoughts.
And
Final
like I
thoughts,
said,
and we'll.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just me as a person, it's like I just want to get an understanding of how I'm going to work with somebody, and it doesn't matter which home it is. Like it would probably have to be them saying, "Well, I don't want to look at that house because they're not going to pay the realtor commission."
Could be, yeah.
Right. But other than that, it's like, it should, hopefully this will turn out to be a lot like it is now. It just,
hopefully,
after a few conversations, the world gets used to it, and we're rolling back along.
I think that and I think that you are correct, and I stand on this, on what you said. The market will figure this out, meaning the push and pull of capitalism will find its way through. It's going to happen, and at some point there's going to be sellers saying, "I tried that, it just didn't work for me." I mean, the word's going to get out. What's working, what's not. God bless America. We will figure it out. But here's the next question to be answered. Excuse me. Can the agreement include a range of compensation, which is what everybody wants to know? NAR reiterated that when coming up with a compensation amount, it must be objectively ascertainable and not open-ended, but also noted that the organization isn't dictating a particular payment system. That's where the chickens come in, I bet. Yeah. Agents and their buyers can decide on a set amount, a percentage, an hourly rate, for example. I'm telling you now that there's going to be guys out there selling $1 million homes for 10 grand. That's going to happen. Instead of, I mean, that's just going to happen.
I mean, they're going to. I mean, but it.
But
is it necessarily? Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just finish with this. And this is on that range of compensation idea. What the agreement cannot include, however, is a statement like buyer broker compensation shall be whatever amount the seller is offering the buyer. That's.
See, I kind of like that one. It's off the table. It's like, you have an agreement. It's like, listen, we're going to negotiate my fee through the seller, kind of like we always have, but that they're saying that's not allowed, right?
Correct. They're saying it's got to be objectively ascertainable. It's got to be a number that you can determine. What's the word, Philip? Yeah.
You've got to be able to calculate it. Two people's got to look at it and be able to figure it out. Is what they're saying. I mean,
see, and there you go, and that's, God, I could go on about this. Two things have changed, and it led to, and we didn't even scratch the surface of how it's confusing, and at least the professionals, meaning the people at NAR and I think they are professional, Realtor.com, all these guys. They are aware that it's going to be a new method for buyers, sellers, and real estate professionals across the board, and nobody knows what they're doing yet. I mean, they've gone as far as to say nobody knows what it's going to look like.
I think they're pretty confident. And I think they're. If you look at their strategy from day one, the NAR, I think they've done pretty good. One, they've got every single realtor just about on the face of the planet covered legally through this agreement. That's supposed to go on and be finalized. So. As far as me, something I wouldn't be concerned, like as a lender, I don't, that has no bearing on me. But for every realtor out there, that has got to feel good about, hey, this settlement doesn't apply to me anymore. I am not legally responsible to pay somebody in Missouri $1,000 or something.
Right.
So one, all the realtors are covered, like, right?
As long as they mind their manners.
Well, as long as, and plus all they have to do to be covered though, up till right now, is just to be a member of the NAR.
Correct.
Like going forward, they have, going forward, like all of us, we have to watch we always have to do things correctly.
Yeah.
But I mean, with that, I mean, it's just,
there's,
I expect them to be ethically good anyways. I mean, 99.99% of people are like that anyway. So,
but here's, and I'll leave it with this because we could go on for another hour. Where it becomes tricky is from a professional standpoint. When you're working with new people, you don't know them, they don't know you. To get them to commit to a certain amount, it changes the dynamic of the beginning of that relationship. Right. It used to be that you could meet somebody, say, let's go look at a couple of houses, see if it's a good fit, see if our personalities work. That's off. That you can't do that now. And that's gonna change things.
You could only do it with a temporary one, like doing one this weekend, which is exactly what I wouldn't want to do. I would want to just say, it's hard. It's hard, but I would just have to figure out my strategy as the realtor and go with it. But
I agree.
I know one thing: my strategy wouldn't be to lose anybody. I would rather work for free than I would lose. I just think sellers are going to still pay. I do. I think they're going to work the deal out. So the realtors that are able to get them under whatever contract they can get them under, as long, the whole thing about it is being transparent with the buyer and understanding the buyer knows they can negotiate this fee. That's the whole point of their lawsuit. Yeah. So if you can accomplish that, you can get it done.
Yeah. It's just, anyway, so that was the fastest.
There's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. It's like, because you're a different person, you're going to handle it differently than another realtor. So you just got to figure. We're going to have to figure out what people like and what they're willing to do.
Yep, and then I'll tell you what's going to happen down the road, because there's nothing new under the sun in terms of real estate. There just isn't. Everybody duplicates and copies what's working. That's working. They'll start doing that. Somebody's going to crack the code and figure out what works, and everybody's going to jump on that, and they'll duplicate that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to allow for, like we've been talking about, pretty much every single unnecessary creative option under the sun with this thing. It's
up to and including chickens.
Oh man, you're going to see some chickens. This last round we've seen bottles of whiskey and apple pies and stuff like that. You're going to see some chickens.
I have had it. That's it. That was
Why
the fastest
chicken so
hour
popular ever. Anyways? Why do people want to raise chickens themselves? I've got some friends that he was so proud of this chicken coop. I was like, Lord have mercy, you got a chicken coop in your yard. I'm like, it looked like his dad or something was a builder or something. He came over and overbuilt this chicken coop. I was like, I think they had lost one chicken to a fox, and here we go. It looks like Fort Knox of the chicken coop. I'm like, let the foxes eat too, man. It's a chicken. I'm probably going to eat 3 today. You know what I'm saying? I was like,
go to Costco and get those pretty cheap. That's it. I had any last words there, Rodney?
No, I'm going to get off the chicken. Good stuff today. Appreciate you, Andy.
That was fun. Ange, thank you. Phil, Wendy, thank you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. It's where's my outro? Here it is. Bye now.